Hey guys, welcome again to Whiskey Wilderness. I know it has been a hot minute since we posted something. We have been parked up at a family's property trying to get our bus completely done before we get on the road, but we'll have some new updates for you coming soon in the near future. And in the meantime, why don't we talk about choosing a school bus versus an RV, the pros and cons of it, how to build it out, and how to pick the right bus for you. Number one, cost.
So first we'll go over would be purchase price. So when it comes to a Skoolie and an RV or even a camper van, you're going to see that the prices of the purchase price is going to be very different. For a bus, it's going to be your lowest end. You'll see anywhere from
$1,200 up to $3,000 is the low end. We paid $4,500 for ours.
Yeah.
And then you can see campers anywhere from $1,500 all the way up to $100,000, $200,000. And a lot of Sprinter vans are going to be anywhere from $25,000 plus.
You can get a used RV for basically the same price. You probably could get a Skoolie and renovate it out, but you're stuck with that RV format and it's going to be old, like over 10 years. You're not going to find something that's brand new in the same price range. So price, definitely, if you're building out a camper van or a Skoolie, the cost is definitely going to be more similar. But yes, even if you do a van build out from a base cargo van, you're still looking at the purchase price of the van, which can be anywhere from $10,000 to $30,000, whether it's used or new.
Next, let's talk about build quality. Build quality is something that is highly discussed in the Skoolie community when we talk about a bus versus an RV specifically. Most RVs are fiberboard wrapped in fiberglass. Generally, they're not going to have a lot of steel beams in them, whereas a bus is steel wrapped in steel if it's a traditional school bus. Some of your city buses are going to be steel framed, wrapped in fiberglass. So it's just a thought process that you want to go through when you're looking at what you want to pick out for a vehicle, because that does make a big difference when it comes to, say, crash variabilities. So if we were to rear end somebody at a low speed, we're probably not going to get any damage, but the other car will. Or if we bumped into something, we might get like a little dent, but it's not going to completely ruin our entire vehicle. Whereas an RV, if you back into a tree branch, the branch is going to damage the RV more likely than the RV damaging the branch. So you have to really think about the build quality of the actual vehicle. School buses are built to protect people, whereas an RV is built to just go have a fun weekend out in.
And not only that, when it comes to build quality, when you're looking at a school bus, it's built and designed to last much longer than an RV is typically on the road. An RV is a recreational vehicle. It's meant to be driven on the weekends, periodically throughout the year. It's never was designed to be driven every day over and over and over again. Whereas a school bus, though it usually typically only goes about 35 miles an hour doing its bus routes, it's driven every day. And so it's designed in a completely different manner than RVs. So you always take that into consideration.
Additionally, schools do checks and walkthroughs of these buses every single day, and if they find something wrong, they get it fixed. So most buses have had really good maintenance throughout their life, and by the time they get into a resale, a lot of them are going to still be in really good condition. Number 3, lifestyle.
So when it comes to getting a Skoolie, you really got to balance what your lifestyle is like. So if you're a single person versus a couple with pets or a couple with children, those are options you need to weigh in for what you're getting. You also need to look at how are you using it. Are you using this like a typical RV? Are you just taking it out on the weekend for trips? Are you going to be doing more long haul, like where you're living on the road? Are you going to be just letting it park and only taking it out periodically throughout the year?
All those things really tie into how you build it and what kind of systems you put into the vehicle. RVs are a completely pre-built system, but they do have drawbacks. They have smaller water tanks. They have black water tanks. and they generally have little or no solar systems or ability to really be off-grid, whereas in school buses and even some vans, you have the ability to have a much more expansive system that increases your ability to boondock in much longer sets of time.
Yeah, when it comes to boondocking, if that's going to be your lifestyle where you're going out into the wilderness, RVs are great for short trips. You can be off power for a little bit, but they're really designed to be connected to power and
RV power,
and
shore
water
power.
at like RV parks. So if that's what you plan to do, then an RV would probably be better because you're probably going to be more limited on where you can get in with a Skoolie because of a conversion. And we'll talk about more about that later.
Additionally, when you're looking at lifestyle, even if you want to boondock a lot in your Skoolie, it is always a great idea to put shore power and water hookups, RV style, in your vehicle regardless.
Oh yeah, because there's definitely places you can go that will take Skoolies as an RV conversion. It's just mainly going to be your big tourist areas and your major cities that won't allow it.
So that kind of leads into pros and cons. So Skoolie Life has a lot of pros and cons. Pros being that you can pick a vehicle of a size that you want and build it out however you want for whatever you want to use it for. But some of the cons are things like difficulty getting registration switched over, getting a title change, difficulty getting insurance, difficulty getting into certain areas or things like an RV park. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't do this, because there are still plenty of places that you can take it and plenty of places you can go that you can still really enjoy your time and enjoy the home that you're building.
Yeah, the biggest challenge with Skoolies right now is that there's no parameters, there's no codes built into how we build these. Most people are following, how you either build a boat system or how you build an RV system. We lean more towards how people put these off-grid systems in boats versus RVs, because RVs, they use traditional housing materials, which typically that's why partly the reason why they don't last as long, because those materials weren't really designed. Not to say they're not completely capable of handling the system, such as things like Romex and copper pipe and hard pipe for gas lines. It's that it's just not going to, without proper maintenance, last as long as something that is built to go into a boat, where a boat is, it's hitting, crashing into waves. People keep them for longer periods of time rather than being, so they get some more, I don't want to say disposable, but yes, people don't keep RVs for very long compared to sailboats and things like that.
Yeah. So choosing to spend the money on very specific choices can make or break the quality of your build and the longevity of that build. Really great example that we see a lot is people using household Romex cable to run all the electricity for their Skoolies. We chose not to do that. We chose to do an outdoor graded electrical cable for ours that has a much thicker covering on it, so it can be more resistant to all of the aggravation from driving and moving around, and it has a more waterproof capability, so if there were a leak somewhere, our electrical wouldn't get fried. Also, something like the right cable for your propane lines. We chose to spend extra money and get braided propane line for our bus in order to guarantee that our propane cables were going to be safe and work for extended periods of time while we're living in this bus and towards the future when maybe we settle down and we're not traveling as much. So just taking those extra steps and spending that little bit of extra money can really make or break your build in the long term and cause it to be more safe as well.
And there's also, when you're looking at these, when you're looking at building out, whether you decide to use, stranded wire or hard wire like Romex, it all comes down to how are you installing it? Are you taking all the proper precautions? Because yes, you can build out with these more household materials, but they require certain things. You cannot just lay the cable in and let it sit. It has to be supported in walls, and that's even with including the type of wire we used. But you have a little bit more give and a little bit more variance when you're choosing those other, probably more pricier materials. Okay.
So now we've discussed some of the more basic breakdowns of pros and cons of RVs versus Skoolies. And now we're going to talk about if you've decided that you're going to go for it and go to Skoolie, let's talk about choosing your bus. Skoolies come in a wide variety of styles and shapes. They come in dog nose format and flat nose format traditionally. Now, when it comes to your large buses like ours, you can have a traditional school bus, or you can have something that's more like a city bus or a long-term travel bus, such as an MCI. Those are those big kind of Greyhound style buses with the great big storage compartments underneath. Now, you want to evaluate not only the body style of your school bus, but your engine and transmission too, because those make a huge difference depending on how often you want to travel. For our bus, we knew that we wanted at minimum an Allison 2000 transmission and at minimum a T444E engine. That's a 7.3 liter diesel engine. Now, there are some amazing Facebook groups out there that have whole sections, kind of an Excel spreadsheet, if you would say, of these engine and transmission combinations. And that should be one thing that you really focus on when you're initially looking for the bus. Finding the engine and transmission combination that you want can help guide you into what type of buses have those combinations and where you can kind of start looking. Additionally, the size of the bus is important. So what we did is we went to an Airstream dealership, are about the same height and width as a traditional school bus. So we decided to walk Airstreams to find out what we felt most comfortable in when it came to the smaller size and sizing down from a traditional apartment. We found a 27 to 29 foot Airstream was what we thought would be most ideal for the two of us and our two very large dogs. And that's what we sought out to look for in a school bus. We also knew that we wanted to boondock a lot more often, and we didn't want to worry about ground clearance. So we decided to go with a traditional school bus, which has a much higher ground clearance than a city bus or a travel bus does. We also got the dog nose school bus. So for us, we not only like the general style of the dog nose school bus, but we also like the accessibility to the engine should it ever need work. All we have to do is flip that hood up and we have full access to our engine. Whereas flat nose school buses have the engine sitting underneath the driver or in the back encased inside of the vehicle. Those tend to be a little harder to work on, and with diesel mechanic prices being anywhere from $100 to $300 an hour, that makes a huge difference. An international school bus, it makes it easy for us to find certain parts and pieces like headlights, taillight covers, interior bulbs, things of that nature, and probably windows should we ever break one in the future. These are so common at junkyards that we could probably find them very, very easily to get replacements. So that's another little factor you can think about. What you also want to look at is the area the bus was built in. So we decided to look in the Denver area for a bus. Now, there are a few reasons for this. Number one, they do not use salt in the winter. They use sand. I believe Montana also uses sand, as does Wyoming. That means that it's a lot less likely to have any form of rust on it. And when we went to go look at our bus, we found a dealer there called Rocky Mountain Bus Sales, who was amazing. They pride themselves on rust-free vehicles. So we had no rust except for one spot near the front stairwell underneath the original floor. So always rip out the original floor. I know it's hard, just do it. And ours also had a Webasto engine heater stock. A lot of your cold area buses have this. That engine heater means that if we were boondocking and it was really cold and we needed to move out, we can turn on that engine heater that is wired into our gas lines, and that will heat our engine instead of having to plug it in. Because our bus was really well taken care of, there were no leaks in it, which we did double check multiple times over. It's been through some thunderstorms. We had no leaks, which is amazing. The fiberglass in the ceiling of our bus is very, very thick because it was a winter bus essentially, and we chose to leave that in and not mess with our original ceiling. A lot of people do pull it out and completely replace that, and that's an option that you always have.
So I just want to touch on some of the things about selecting your actual bus body style. When you get the versus the dog nose, the engine's always in the front. But when you get some of the flat nose buses, some of them are pushers. They have the engine in the back, and some have the engine in the front. And those are also things to consider when purchasing your bus, because
the way you build it is going to be altered based on your style.
Yeah,
also, wheel wells. Wheel well differences.
Wheel wells will be different, but then also you got to think about where you're driving. For instance, buses with rear engines, because they're pulling the air in from the back, if they're, you're driving uphill, slower speeds, putting a lot of strain on the engine, it's getting less air to it. Yes, it does have a radiator and everything, and it works well for that, but it's still, you're going to get more heat buildup in the engine and overheating compared to a traditional front engine bus, whether it's flat nose or dog nose. When it comes to the size, then you do get a little bit more room with the flat nose compared to the dog nose, because compared to your full length, you have more of that usable length, because it's not have a big old engine sitting out in front. But then again, it's also these, like Sherry mentioned, access to the engine bay for repairs, and that also touches into the maintenance, and compared to a lot of other things, diesel engines are expensive to work on, but the benefit is that they last a lot longer and can be rebuilt. So you're not looking at a vehicle completely, when it's a bus, completely breaking down to a point where it cannot be repaired. Just depends on how much it costs. It may be more cost productive to, if you're just looking at a bus and it doesn't have any renovations in it, it might be easier just to buy a different bus if you buy one and it turns out to be bad, because it might that's how it would be. And that's also the reason why I went to the dealer. We paid a little bit more, but we got a little bit more peace of mind, because when you get them from auctions, you kind of really don't know what you're getting. And all the things like the lights and everything, I'm not so sure that all the auctioneers places do they completely deactivate all that stuff. Our bus, the guy went through,
the flashers and the stop sign were already disconnected.
He not only disconnected them, but he took out all the breakers and all the fuses for them, so we don't have to even worry about it. So everything is just a little more together in our fuse panel area, so it's a little more accessible and not as confusing when you are doing your wiring. So it had some advantages. The slight disadvantages, we paid a little more, but we feel like we've driven already across country and it's not had a problem.
The only thing we had was we had to get a couple of new hose clips for a few areas of the engine, and that was it. And that's the benefit of buying from a high quality dealership that really cares, even to the point where when we first went to that dealership, we had actually been eyeing a bus with a DT 466, and he flat out refused to sell it to us after we told him that we were going to be building out to live in and travel, because he knew that there was some sort of mechanical issue in it. So he showed us this bus and showed us paperwork, and it was mechanically stable, and we knew that as our second engine option that this would be perfect for us. So there's just little things about who you buy from and where you go, and don't be afraid to travel to get your perfect bus. We went 8 hours to get this thing.
Some people have gone longer.
Some people go multiple states, and it's worth it. When you find the right one, you find the right one. We got really lucky really early on and found this, but yeah, it could have taken us longer, and we would have kept looking until we found what we wanted. Ours also only had 130,000 miles on it when we bought it, and it was very recently deactivated from service, so it was really good. A couple little things talking about layouts and everything. So dog nose buses, they have 2 wheel wells on the interior about halfway back into the bus. They're quite tall, and you do need to build around those. Some of the flat nose buses, depending on what kind of bus it is, might have a 3-inch high wheel well, might have no wheel wells. They almost all have 4 wheel wells in them. So those are all factors you need to think about when you're thinking about what you want out of your build, and how you plan to do a layout. What are you going to prioritize? For us, that was the kitchen, because this guy is an amazing cook and he needed prep space. So we ended up prioritizing our kitchen instead of doing double couches like some people do, or only having a 2 to 4 foot counter. We have a 10-foot counter with a corner cabinet, so we have an additional foot there. So essentially we have a full 11 feet of counter space, with 5 feet of that being prep space in between our stove and our sink. That is totally workable for him. Also, we wanted to make sure that I had a craft space and a desk and a workspace. So we prioritized a 46-inch area for cabinetry and a 36-inch tabletop that we're able to put a desk in a large closet and large storage space under the bed. So it's all little factors that you have to think about for yourself and figure out what works for you. Our bus, because we got it from a dealer, we paid $4,500 for it, which some people told us was way too much money. And additionally, that dealer had already removed the governor off the engine, or the transmission. So instead of the bus being capped at 55 miles an hour, we can, if we wanted to, get up to 70 or 75 in our bus, but we choose not to drive it that quickly. Also, being a Denver built bus, our bus had gearing not only for open roads, but also for hills and mountains. So we get up the mountains and the hills significantly easier than if we had bought a bus from a low state like Florida, for example. So little factors that make a huge difference when you're looking at a vehicle. So just little things to think about. Touching on something we said earlier about insurance, we purposely got a bus that had a 75-inch ceiling height. Now that's because he's under 6 foot, I'm under 6 foot, this ceiling is 6'3". We chose not to do a roof raise, and there's a couple of reasons for that. Insurance companies are getting harder and harder on Skoolies, and especially with Skoolies that have roof raises, if they weren't done by a professional welder, some insurance companies won't cover a bus with a roof raise. So we knew that we didn't want to have to mess with any structural stuff in our vehicle, so we purposely bought a high school bus that has a higher ceiling. Some insurance companies are not doing any insurance on people with wood burning stoves in their buses. And I really want to say, do not lie to an insurance company. That is insurance fraud. Don't do it. We knew that out of the gate. That kind of was presented to us about 2 months into our build. We were looking at heating options, and so we just chose to avoid that. We have a underbench heater from Pioneer that it runs on electricity and doesn't pull too much, and it also has AC in it. So all we have to do now at this point in our build is run some vents for it, which will be amazing. Another thing you want to watch out for when you're doing your build is rooftop decks. Some insurance companies are really coming down hard on that, and just be wary. If you're planning to do a rooftop deck, you may or may not be able to get insurance on it. Regardless of what you call it, if it's a storage area or whatnot, some insurance agents will find Instagram pages, and if they catch you sitting on it, they'll revoke your insurance. So just have a thought about that. We chose to just not do it. If we want to go sit up on our roof, we can sit on our roof, but we're just gonna hang out front instead. And if you guys have any other questions, feel free to leave it in the comments below, and we will get back to you with another video on it. Yeah. Thanks for watching, guys. See you soon.